So a little bit about me is I'm an art teacher. I've been taught all over the world. I've been teaching for maybe, I think this is my 14th year. And I started off in New York City as a public school teacher, and I taught kids of all ages, mostly focused on the lower elementary school, like pre-K through 6th grade, but also some middle school and also high school. And I was a teacher in New York for I think 9 years. And then I ended up moving to Iceland for a year. And I taught in Iceland, an international school there. And there I taught everything. It wasn't just art, but it was kind of awesome because I taught kids and adults of all ages. And it was all students from all over the world, so very global. And then we moved to California. And here I work for the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity. So one of the things that I love to do is drawing from observation. And I love to teach my kids drawing from observation because of a couple things. One is that it's super easy. There, you don't have to have a lot of materials. You just have to have a pencil and a piece of paper. You can do it anywhere. The other thing is that I always notice a lot of kids and adults like to draw from photographs. And I was doing a workshop on portfolios for high school students getting into college, and I was sitting down with all these kids and going through their portfolios. And what struck me was how many kids had images that were pieces that they had taken inspiration from photographs. And while that's a great skill, and it's a great way to get inspiration and to pull images and to help you figure out what you want to draw, it's very, very different from drawing from observation. Because when you're drawing from observation, you're teaching your brain how to look. And you're trying to start to think and look like an artist. And when you're drawing from a photograph, the work's already been done for you because you're drawing from a piece of paper that is already, a photograph is a 2D form. So making that switch from looking at something that is 2-dimensional to looking at something that's 3-dimensional and using your brain to help you notice the shapes, notice the light and the shadow, and try to translate that into a 2D shape is just totally different skill set. So one of the things I love to do with my students is just sit them down and have them draw from observation. And you could draw anything. What I'm going to do today is a plant. When I'm drawing and when I'm picking out what I want to draw, one of the crucial things is you want it to be super, super simple. You don't want to pick a plant or a giant tree. You want to almost zoom in and pick something that is that doesn't have a lot of detail, because the more you sit and you look at something, the more details will really start to pop out for you. And so one of the tools that can help you with that, and I know a lot of people have a lot of trouble when they first start to draw at learning how to compose a picture and to learning where to look. So one of the tools that I like to make is just a little viewfinder. I just took a piece of paper and I folded it and I cut a hole out of the middle to make a little viewfinder. And what I do with my viewfinder is I kind of line up what I want to draw and I close one eye, and it just kind of helps me get my composition. And it can help you to really zoom in and focus on one little part of your picture, because if you've chosen to draw a whole tree, that can be really, really overwhelming, and it can be hard to do because there's just so much. So instead of trying to draw something really big, really, really zoom in and try to pick, if you're doing a plant from home, try to pick just a part of a plant, just a corner. Like I said, my drawing or my plant from home is this really sad looking plant that only has 4 leaves. And on my way here into the center, one of the leaves broke. So now it really only has 3 leaves, 3.5. It's hanging on by a thread. But that's okay, because I don't want too much detail, because you're gonna see, I could spend over an hour just adding in some of these tiny little details. So some of the materials that I'm going to work with, and I'm going to switch my camera so that you guys can see what I'm doing. So what I'm working with on today is we're going real lo-fi. So any materials just from home. It's just a piece of paper. I think it's just regular copy paper. And the three pencils, or two pencils really, that I'm using are a Kimberly 8B pencil. So if you've ever wondered on a pencil why there's the number, why you had to use a number 2 pencil growing up, the reason is that the higher the number, so both of these are Bs. This is a 2B and this is an 8B. The B stands for blackness, and that means the lead is dark. So it's the blacker the lead. And the higher the number, the darker the lead's gonna be. So the 2B is kind of your standard regular pencil, and your 8B is gonna be a much darker, softer lead. And I like using both because 8B is great for adding in shading, and the darker the lead, the more coverage you're gonna get on your paper. And a 2B is better for drawing in details and fine lines. So I usually start with a 2B, and some pencils even go into the H category, and H stands for hardness. So you can kind of go 2B to 8B. So, or sorry, you can go, I think you can even go 8H to 8B. So, but basically there's a scale. So it goes from hard to black. So I like using two different types just because you get two different, totally different effects. The other thing I have is it's just a water-based varnish pencil, and it's great for, it's really sharp. You can put it in the sharpener, the pencil sharpener, and it's great. It's basically an eraser. I treat it like an eraser. So it's great for getting some of those fine details out. And this is just a Faber-Castell Germany Perfection 7058, if you are curious. So those are the tools I'm using today. I'm gonna use my viewfinder. And like I said, a viewfinder is great for helping you compose your shot. A viewfinder is also really good at helping you figure out the proportions. So well, actually, one of the other things that I like to do, and before I start, I'll show you, this is a finished piece. And this I did with some students before the lockdown. And I think this was just my example. And we were sitting outside, and all we did was, I think we spent maybe 3 days on something like this. So an hour each day. And the first drawing we did, we tried to draw the whole shape. The second drawing, we zoomed in a little bit more. And the third drawing, we zoomed in even further. So, and like I said, when do we give ourselves time to just sit down and look at something for an hour? You'd be really, really surprised. The longer you start to look, the more things that you're gonna notice, the more shapes you're gonna see. So one of the things I always like to do is just kind of give my paper a border, kind of like my viewfinder. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start adding that in. So when I'm starting a drawing, a couple tips. Always start lightly. Start with sketchy, light lines. The lighter the lines, the better. It's much easier to erase. So one of the first things I'm doing is learning to see, or just looking to see what the basic shapes of what I'm drawing are. So as I'm looking, and I can use my viewfinder to really zoom in, I'm using it to have a quick peek. All I'm doing is using my pencil, I'm just gonna lay out some of the simple, basic shapes. And one of the things I really like about drawing plants is that plants are organic. They don't look a certain way. Especially as we get older, we have expectations on what things look like. So for instance, if you're trying to do a direct observation drawing of your hand, it can actually be a lot more challenging than doing a direct observation drawing of a plant. And the reason is because we all know what a hand looks like. We've grown up looking at our hands, we've grown up looking at other people's hands. So you have an expectation of exactly what a hand looks like. But a plant is organic. A plant it doesn't necessarily look a certain way. So as you're drawing in a plant, it can just be an easier jumping off or starting point for you. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of penciling in the shape that I see of the planter. And the planter is kind of wonky, and that's totally fine. I actually work in ceramics. So this is a planter I think I made maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So it's kind of wonky to begin with, which is perfect for my drawing. And I don't want to get too detailed. I'm really just kind of penciling in approximate shapes. So I'm looking for the lines. I'm looking for where things meet. I'm looking for the joints. So I'm noticing, okay, so I've got this kind of ellipsoid shape at the top of my planter. And I see coming up over here, well, first of all, maybe I'll just lightly sketch in. There's like my sad leaf, my super sad leaf is going all the way down over here. And you know what? He's going so far down in my picture that he might even go off my page, and that's totally fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm using my viewfinder. Maybe you can see it over here in my other feed. So I'm really using my viewfinder to kind of get a sense of where and what I'm drawing. So like maybe about this is where like my composition is. So I'm using that to really help me. And because the closer your drawing is to the edges, the easier it is to see the proportions. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just kind of penciling in really lightly. I'm not too worried about any of the details. I'm just super lightly kind of penciling in the shapes and going from there. And then I'm gonna come up here, I'll pencil in this shape up here, just like that. And I'm trying to really notice where things hit. So I notice this leaf comes out and it hits right at the like lip of this vase, and it kind of comes back out and over, and then just like kind of like that. Drawing from observation, like I said, because it's so low tech, you can literally do this anywhere. You can, if you're going on vacation, you can do it. You can bring a pencil and a piece of paper. If you are just bored and sitting at home, you can do this at home. There's really no limitation to where you draw, and basically there's no limitations to what materials you use. If you prefer drawing with a charcoal pencil, then by all means draw with a charcoal pencil. If you prefer drawing in some other medium or working in ink, by all means use whatever material you feel comfortable with. I'm just drawing in pencil because like I guess that's the medium that I feel comfortable with right now. So I'm just starting to pencil in some of my shapes. I'm just going super light, adding in I'm not thinking about the details. I'm literally just looking for where shapes hit other shapes to help me get a sense of these proportions. So this leaf is kind of coming out over here, just like this. All right, so as I'm going, and once I've started kind of penciling in my general outline and the general shapes, only after I do that, do I start trying to look for details. And I should have said this in the beginning, that one of my favorite lines to say when you're drawing from observation is to draw what you see. Don't draw what you think you see, because I cannot tell you, and I am guilty of this all the time, and I think almost all artists who try to draw from observation are, is that we get sucked into looking at our drawings way too much. In reality, you should be looking at your object or what you were drawing at least half of the time, which is really, really, really challenging. It's really, really challenging to pull your eyes away, but your eyes should constantly be darting from your paper to your object, from your paper to your object, because when you're drawing, it can be really, really easy to say, oh, okay, there's this leaf right here, I'm just gonna draw it, because I know what a leaf shape looks like. But the truth is that when you're drawing from observation, you really, really wanna be looking. You wanna draw what you actually see, not what you think is there. Because the leaf, you might be perfect. It might be like the right exact shape and then you've nailed it. But for most of us, what we think we see isn't actually what we're really looking at. So you want to really pay close attention and try zooming in and just try to notice the details of what it is that you are looking at. So don't focus too much on what you think you see. Don't focus too much on your actual drawing. You should really, really be looking at your object at least half of the time. So, all right, so now that I've kind of got some shapes in, I'm just gonna go ahead and start laying down a really light layer of shadow. And I'm just, like I said, you can use whatever materials you want to draw with. But what I find, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to do everything in charcoal or in graphite. If you want to add in color to your drawings, by all means, add in color. But I'm going to try to use my brain and my eyes to translate what I'm seeing into graphite. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of looking at my object and I'm noticing that there's like this layer of dirt in here. So I'm just kind of lightly penciling it in. And one thing I'm going to say is when you're shading and when you're adding in shadows and highlights, it's always best to start light. Start super light, because you can always go darker. You can always add more graphite. You can always add more color to make something darker or brighter. It's really hard to take color away. So as you're working, try starting light. It's just like when you're sketching anything. You wanna, lighter is better to start with, and it's better to gradually add in depth and gradually add in color and darkness and shading, because you're just gonna get a better result that way. Okay, so I'm just going to add in. I'm gonna actually, one of the things that you don't wanna forget is after you've penciled in some of your object, you don't wanna forget to add in the shadows. And also, I'm actually gonna add in the table, because right now my plant just looks like it's floating. And I don't really like floating objects. I prefer things when they're like sitting on something. So I'm gonna use my viewfinder, because that can help me know where the lines are that I should add in for my table. So I'm using it. I'm actually going to hold it up here. It's a little tricky to hold it down here, because this perspective is slightly different from what I'm drawing, just slightly. But I'm going to hold it up here, and I just close one eye and I see, okay, I see this table is kind of coming out right about here. And then we don't really see the curve of the table, but it's coming out kind of back over here. So it's kind of coming like this. Actually, it's coming like, yeah, it's coming a little bit like that. All right, so no, actually, I made a mistake. I'm gonna fix that. It kind of comes out a little bit farther. That's why it's good to have the viewfinder. So it's coming right about here. There we go. A little more angled. All right. So now that I've added that in, let me take my paper, turn it this way. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to add in some shadows, because what I'm looking for is I'm looking for my light source. And I'm noticing that my light source is coming from over here. So Scott, do you mind spotlighting the object? Thank you. So I really want to notice where my light is coming and where I'm noticing those shadows. So my light is coming from the window, which is right over here. And it's really hitting the edge of this leaf. It's really hitting the edge of this pot. So I can see all of these like nice little highlights in here. And it's really casting a shadow over here. And you can see the shadow is really kind of coming out. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to my other. So I'm really just gonna start to pencil in where that shadow is. And like I said, starting off light and then adding layers to make it darker. That line right underneath where the pot is sitting is the darkest part of this. And I'm actually gonna switch to my 8B pencil to start to just kind of add in some of that shadow. I like the darker graphite, because you can get a lot of coverage really quickly with your pencil. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that in. So I'm changing the value of my graphite. The closer I get to the pot, the darker the shadow is. So I add a little bit, I make the value a little bit darker, just like that. And as I'm going away, the value is getting a little bit lighter. There's also the shadow gets lighter as it goes up. It doesn't just end on that nice straight line right here. I'm really trying to look and draw what I see not what I think I see. So not where, don't draw the shadow where you think the shadow is. Really take a moment and like notice where you see that shadow coming in. Just like that. Now that I have some of that drawn in, I think I'm going to go back in and start adding in some of the details. So I might just add in some of these shapes. I'm going to switch to my 2B pencil, just like this, because I'm really trying to start to zoom in and notice some of these tiny details. So I'm adding in these shapes that are on this planter. I'm going to add in, I'm going to go and work on the leaves in a moment. But like I said, I really like drawing plants because they are organic shapes and because there's just less worry to get something to look perfect. It's not about making something look perfect. It's really just about practice. I tell my students all the time that you wouldn't expect to pick up a violin and be perfect at it right away. The same is true of drawing and of being an artist. It's all about drawing a little bit every day, and it's all about really practicing. So the more you draw, the better that you'll get at it. So the more things and the more like things that the more different types of things you draw, the wider your repertoire of drawing will be. And the cool thing about drawing from observation is that if you like to draw cartoons, if you like to draw things from your imagination, and then drawing from a direct observation can really help you in making those imaginative drawings, because you're learning and picking up skills as you are drawing from observation. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to darken these up, switch from here to here.
Lee, could you tell us about some artists that you admire, some inspirations?
Sure. Well, right now I've been on a Kehinde Wiley kick. So he is, I just taught a lesson from him earlier this month. He is the artist who did the Obama portrait. He's a contemporary artist who paints these really realistic portraits of usually people of color. And he was who President Obama chose to do his portrait for the National Portrait Gallery. And his work is just really vibrant and colorful, and his method of choosing subjects is really interesting. Aside from President Obama, he usually finds his subjects just by, I think he lives in Brooklyn, or I know he lives in New York. I'm not sure if it's Brooklyn or Manhattan, but he'll just walking on the street, if he sees somebody who is, who has an air about them, who has like a certain level of confidence or just a certain look that he's looking for, he'll literally pull somebody off the streets and paint them. And
Kelly said yes, Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn. Yeah, and one of the cool things about his drawings and his paintings are his just incredible backgrounds. He just does these like really vibrantly colored beautiful like backgrounds. And he also adds, so like for President Obama's portrait, like there was a lot of symbolism in like the background that he chose. Like it was all this foliage, and all the leaves had meaning to them. So it was really interesting because he's kind of interrupting the tropes of a traditionally male, a traditionally white painting like culture. So I think I just really, really like his work. I haven't had a chance yet to go to the National Gallery and see his portrait, but I hope that I get the chance to sometime, because I think it really is just a stunning portrait. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm gonna start adding in some of the shadow to the bowl, and so to this canister. So like I said before, I know that my light source is coming from over here. So I'm gonna start lightly, and especially if I'm doing a shape that is a This is a cylinder, so I'm actually going to try to move my pencil in the direction that that cylinder is formed. So if you see, I'm kind of drawing in, I'm going to start shading in kind of like an arc, and that just kind of helps you get the color in, or the lines in the right direction. So I'm just going to go like this. It's like anytime you're trying to color in a three-dimensional form, you can, like if you're doing a sphere, you kind of want to try to move your pencil in that direction. So once again, make sure you're really, really, really looking at what you're drawing. You're drawing what you see, not what you think you see, because sometimes there's a lot of light reflection, and in this case, there is some, where the light, even though the light is coming from this direction, on this edge right over here, there's like a little thin sliver of light, and it's like the refracted light that's coming around. It's like hitting the paper, or it's hitting something over here, and it's reflecting back on this pot. So even though this is going to be the darker side of this pot, like the shadows don't actually go all the way over to the edge. So I really want to be really careful that I'm paying close attention to what I am really drawing at. Draw what you see, not what you think you see. So I'm starting in really lightly, and I'm going to add a layer, a super thin layer, right, of color, and then I will go back and add in some some areas of darkness. So I also see right over here, like there's a darker shadow that's coming down over here. I'm not sure. I think it might be like a post in the window that's being reflected, but there's like a dark area, dark little shadow that's coming down right here. And over here, it's really bright. So I'm not gonna add in a whole lot of color over there. So now I'm gonna go back in, I'm gonna add in some layers, working, always working to add darkness, to add depth. One of the things I really always notice when I see student work, and I mentioned I was doing this portfolio review. I did this earlier this year for high school students who were trying to get into art schools. And it was striking to me how they would have these beautiful sketches. And most students did have at least one piece of art that was from observation drawing. But one of the things I noticed is that they almost never ever took their value dark enough. So what I have right now is pretty gray. I'm not going nearly dark enough. So let me show you an example of something where I did go dark enough. This example was done over a long period of time, and you get to something that is super dark just by layering and by going and adding in more and more, dark and dark and dark, because a lot of times students don't go dark enough. They stop somewhere in this middle of this gray zone. And in reality, you really want to focus on building up those values to make sure that the darkest areas in your picture really are that like super true dark black color. It's really challenging to overwork a picture, and you'll know when you do it. If you've ever overworked a picture, you know, you're like, I did too much to that. It's not great. But it's far more common to underwork a picture. And so I highly suggest that everybody attempt to try to overwork a picture one time, to try to do so much shading and so add so much color that you know that it's just too much, because sometimes you'll find as you're working that, oh wait, I haven't really overworked this. This is actually just enough. So everybody should try that at one point. So I'm just going back in. It depends on what kind of shading you like to do. Sometimes people use their finger, or they like smudging or blending. It just kind of depends on what kind of effect you're going for. Sometimes I use my finger to like help smooth. You don't have to. It's a way to blend in the colors a little bit more if you want the gradient to go away. This paper I'm using isn't like, I went super low tech today. The paper I'm using is just a copy paper. It's literally just paper that goes in the printer. So I was trying to demo with items that anybody has in their house, just to show you guys that you don't have to have fancy art materials. You don't have to have special tools. That you can make art with just a simple piece of copy paper, a plant from your house, and a pencil. You don't even have to have the 2 pencils like I have. You can just use one. So I'm going to zoom back out because I'm going to, I'm going to start to think about some of these leaves now and go back in. Right now I'm just layering down like a light layer of shadow on this leaf that's the closest to the pot. And I'm going to go back in. I'm going to add in all the details that I notice about it. I notice there's like all these little veins. When do we really like let ourselves sit and look at an object for an hour? Like very, very rarely. And the longer you really start to sit and look, the more detail and the more things just will really, really start to pop out. The student that I did this drawing with, this assignment with, she was amazed, and I don't have her example because she took it home with her. But when we really zoomed in to the third and just started looking super, super closely, she was just amazed at how much tiny detail there is. Like the more time you sit and the more like the longer you stare at something, the more things will pop out to you.
There was a question that came in. Didn't Chuck Jones draw from life a lot, like at the zoo?
He did. In fact, a lot. Yeah, he absolutely did. A lot of his characters were based on animals, and he would 100% use real life animals as inspiration. And a lot of cartoonists do the same thing. So my uncle he worked for Disney. He actually worked on The Little Mermaid. And one of the things that he was tasked with drawing was all the water shots. So there's a lot of water shots in The Little Mermaid. And one of the things that he would just do is he would go to the beach, and he would sit and he would draw the water, and he would do that all the time. And Chuck Jones did the same thing. I think for White Seal, there was like a real seal that was like an inspiration. Yeah, for the cats and Coyote, Roadrunner and Coyote, those are all inspired by real animals and real characters that he would sit and draw. And that's why drawing from observation is such a good practice, because you take what you learn from drawing from observation, you can use it to do your cartoons or to do your imaginary drawings or fictional drawings. Yeah, drawing from observation is always a key form of just practice. And if you have a sketchbook, it's just super easy. It's so easy. My other hobby is the other medium that I really work in is clay, ceramics, and it's so not easy comparatively. Like there's so many things you have to have. You have to have the clay, you have to have a wheel, you have to have all the water. Like comparatively, anybody can sit down and sketch something from observation. Like I was saying, that drawing from a photograph, I don't know what it is about drawing from a photograph, but a lot of kids, especially a lot of students, love to draw from photographs, and it's great. It's a great practice. But like I said, you're not training your eye to really see the shapes. You're not training your eye to really learn how to look for the light. You're not training your eyes to really learn how to notice the value and the light and the shadow and the shapes and the proportion, because all of that has already been done for you when you are drawing from a photograph or when you're working from a painting. And that's not to say that's not bad. In fact, one of my favorite assignments when I went to New York University for college, and I studied art history, and I studied studio art. I also studied education, did all three. And one of my favorite assignments in my painting class was to go to the Met and to pick a painting and to copy it. And it was really fascinating how, I think I picked a John Singer Sargent painting, and it was so challenging. It was so challenging. And to this day, I still remember that as being like my favorite painting assignment, because it taught you so much about how that artist worked. So like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing to draw from observation, or to draw from somebody's piece of work, or to draw from a photograph, or draw from something that's already two-dimensional. But it's just good practice to also draw from observation.
So speaking of practice, and you were talking about Chuck Jones earlier, could you talk about that quote from Chuck Jones, the 100,000 bad drawings?
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna totally bungle it, but Chuck Jones did have a saying, and it went something like, everybody has 100,000 bad drawings in them that they have to get out. So you have to like, that's all about practice. It's all about like getting your bad drawings out. And the only way to do that is by drawing a whole bunch, by drawing just a little bit every day. Yeah, that's what I tell my students all the time, is that if you have a sketchbook, like, just take 15 minutes out of your day and try to draw something. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to love it, but just do it. It's because it's just like playing an instrument. You get better over time. It's all about practice. And like Chuck Jones said, it's all about getting the bad drawings out. Thanks for reminding me of that quote, Scott. I had completely forgotten about that one. Okay, so like I said before, really look at what you're drawing. My quote is, draw what you see, not what you think you see. Because we are all guilty of that. And while drawing from observation really is a testament to drawing things realistically, like I said before, you can learn a lot about drawing things not realistically by just having the practice of drawing things from life. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start to add in some of the details. So I already know that it is 4:47, and just by looking at this, I already know I'm not going to finish this drawing, and that's okay, because the level of detail that you add is totally up to you. I tend to, when I work on drawing from observation, I get really detailed, and I tend to want to really include all those tiny little specks, all those tiny little pieces, and it definitely takes me a while, and that's okay, because that's just the way that I work. You might be a faster drawer, and that's totally fine. It's just the way you work. But I always do encourage somebody, and I encourage my students really, to try to, if they have the time, to sit with an object for at least an hour. Like, try your best to go back in and really notice all the tiny details. That's why I suggested in the beginning, if you were drawing along with us, to choose an object that didn't have a lot of detail, because the more you look, the more you're going to notice, and the more small details will really start to pop out at you. I did a week of observational drawing the other day, or I guess it was a couple months ago now, and every day we picked a different object to draw. So one day was a house plant, another day was a shoe. We just picked a shoe out of your closet and we drew a shoe. Another day was a traditional bowl of fruit. I feel like that's just like the art teacher's standard. Was a bowl of fruit. And oh my gosh, what else did I draw, Scott? Do you remember? Remember what the other ones were? But every day I just pick something.
Oh, I think your husband's Nintendo, right?
Yeah, I had a day where it was just a choose your own. Yes, I did. I drew my husband's Switch. because I thought the colors and the shape were really interesting. So it's very, very different to draw a plant than it is to draw something that is like architectural or something that is man-made. It's a totally different style of drawing. It's a totally different types of lines. You're going from organic to geometric, and as you're doing that, like it's good practice to try drawing both. I think that drawing organic shapes is probably easier for most beginners, unless you just have I mean, that's not necessarily always true. I had a private student earlier this year that she just loved drawing architectural drawings. Like she was just in love with drawing things geometrically. But I would say for the majority of us, drawing things that are organic, if you're just a beginner and if you just want to practice, it's a little easier, just because, like I said before, organic shapes are organic. They don't necessarily have a right way of drawing them. Whereas if it's a more geometric form, then we sometimes come at it and we're like, we know it looks a certain way, and that can be a little more challenging. But it's also just really, really good practice to try doing both. So like I said before, I just like to work in layers. And as I go, I try to layer in the darkness. So I try to really, really, really try to build up those dark values. Really try to build them up, because the dark values are really what make your picture pop. Like I said before, it's really hard to overwork your picture. It's much, much easier to underwork it. So I challenge everyone sometime to try to overwork your picture. It's really hard to do. It's really, really hard to do. So keep building up those dark layers and try to make those shadows really pop, because that's what makes your picture pop. And even if you think that it's dark enough, go back, make it a little darker. See what happens. I feel like the opposite of Bob Ross right now, where I'm just like he's so fast and I'm like the slowest. Like happy little leaf over here. All right. But yeah, does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Is there anything you can talk about, like the Chuck Jones Center, the resources online?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So since the pandemic started, we have been really focused on making all of our content and all of our classes digital. So we've really, really been working hard as a team to do a bunch of different classes. So we host free classes open to anybody that are posted usually weekly. I think this month we actually might have posted them a whole month in advance. But we have at least one class, I think one free class a week, one free class a day each week. I teach on Tuesdays, and the classes vary. If you're ever interested, you can go on and see. The styles and mediums change every day. Sometimes it's more focused on cartooning. Sometimes it's more focused on learning about different artists and different mediums. Every art teacher here kind of approaches it in a different way, which is kind of amazing. But especially if you're into cartooning and you are interested in learning more about being a cartoonist and drawing, then you can check us out at chuckjonescenter.org. I think if you go to chuckjonescenter.org, there is a list for virtual classes, and you can go on and see. And the cool thing that we do is that whatever class that we host or that we do, we actually also post to our YouTube site, which is called Chuck Redux, ChuckRedux. And so you can go and you can see, and like I said, we've been doing this since the very beginning. So we now have, I think we're nearing the 100th online class. So if you are at all interested, and it's great for people of all ages. In fact, one of the things that's really cool is that in my class, I have had students as young as 5 and as old as adult. I don't know exactly how old, but and basically all ages in between, which is kind of amazing. And a lot of the classes that we do are tailored to any of these ages, so anybody can participate. They're really, really fun. In addition to that, we also host camps, mostly for students, mostly for, I would say, elementary through high school students, but the free classes are for anybody. And if you want to take just to get a taste of some of the classes and things that we do, you're welcome to go to our website. So I highly suggest that you go there and you check out some of our classes. We have a bunch of great teachers. We even have, if you're, it's not in the art world, or it's a different form of art. If you're into clowning, we even had a clowning teacher come in, and I think he's on Wednesdays. He was teaching you how to be a clown, I guess. I don't know, how to tell jokes. It's just some really fun things. So this month in my class, I can tell you, I am hosting, my focus is on artists of color. So every class that I teach this month is focused on either an artist of color or an artist, specifically women artists too. I really wanted to make sure that I was representing a bunch of women artists, because like the art world is you know, pretty male and white dominated. So I think it's good to spotlight artists of all types. And so if you're interested, you can check mine. My classes will be listed under my name, Lee. So you can always check that out. But yeah, love to see some of you guys join. See, so yeah, so there's some of the shading, and you can see I'm really trying to blend in nicely, and I can see I need to work on this edge right here. So I'm really trying to just build up the color. I'm really trying to, and it's just all practice, trying to make those blends look really smooth. Try to go from light to dark. So, and try to like work on changing that value and making the values go smoothly from one to the other. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like the entire time I've been working on this cylinder, my pencil has always been going in an arc shape the entire time, because that's just the way that this shape, the shape goes in that direction. So that's the way my pencil goes. It just makes it easier. It makes it a little simpler to do things that look a little more realistic if you're working on shading in the direction of the pot that you're shading, or the shape that you're shading. Awesome. All right. Well, I hope you guys had fun, and I hope you guys had a chance to do some drawing of your own. And I hope you have a great time doing it the rest of the Draw-A-Thon. All right. Thanks again, Michelle.